Joining me now, Tammy Bruce, president of the Independent Women's Voice and a Fox News contributor, and Geraldo Rivera, Fox News correspondent at large. Tammy, let me start with you. What do you make of this schism?
Well, on one hand, it's kind of good news, because a lot of people have argued that women are all going to govern the same, that if you get women in there, they're all going to be great, they're going to be better than men, they're going to be fabulous. Whereas women, as I've always argued as a feminist, women are as complicated as men are. Women can be as bad as men, or as good, or as wrong, or as right as men have been. And this is a good example of that. Here you've got 5 women in the same party, very, very different points of view, and going after each other. But there's a reason why Nancy Pelosi has been in Congress for a very long time and seems to understand that you can't punish people or abandon them based on your politics of wanting to hurt, as an example, President Trump, that there needs to be money at the border, that real lives are being affected. And at the same time, they argue, the squad, if you will, that they seem to think that it's Twitter that matters. The New York Times made it clear a couple of months ago that the average Democrat is not on Twitter, that these are the extremes.
The average human being is not on Twitter.
Well, exactly. And so it's a matter of being, I think, experienced enough to understand what the difference is between the actual grassroots and what's going on in social media.
Right. Geraldo, what do you see in this battle?
I see it as a gender play, or rather as a chronological play rather than a gender play. You have the 4 young horsewomen of the resistance versus old Queen P, Pelosi. The 4 kids, the youngest ever, AOC, the first Palestinian, first African refugee, the first black woman from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. These are, seminal historic figures of the younger generation, and they want all of it. They want it now. They want the Green New Deal. They want free college tuition. They want Medicare for everybody, which is great. Everybody wants it. But Nancy Pelosi, very impressive, 79 years old. She's, in many ways, I think she's more effective now than she was the last time she was Speaker of the House. She saw that there was a dilemma at the border. You had these horrible conditions that the 4 young women were complaining bitterly about, heartfelt complaints, drinking water from toilets and so forth, and yet they were opposed to the bill to fix the problems they were complaining about. Why? Because they worried that the president would use some of the money for a border wall.
Yeah, and as we pointed out here, that doesn't help those kids who are sleeping on the floor too much. This is Brian Fallon, who managed Hillary Clinton's campaign. The 4 House freshmen whom Pelosi dismisses in the Dowd column have done more to define the vision and moral center of today's Democratic Party than all the message bills pushed by the party leadership combined. And my question is, do you agree with him, Tammy? Do they represent the party?
Well, that's the argument, isn't it? Is that the conservatives and others, the Republican Party, say this is a representation of who the Democrats are. But if you look at social media, I suppose that might be the case. But consider this. AOC argues that she's a representation of what the nation wants. Only 11% of Democrats voted in her race, and then she only won by 4,000 votes. That is not a representation of not the nation, but the Democrat Party itself. But this is the war right now, the civil war, if you will. Who is going to end up representing them? And I think it's the Democrats are going to be stuck with this if they don't go out and vote and abandon their responsibility, because then individuals who don't represent what the average American who happens to be a Democrat wants are going to be represented by them.
Geraldo, last word on this.
Idealistic. You have to be idealistic. You have to be aspirational if you're a young person. The world is your oyster. Everything is possible.
There's real life.
There'll be plenty of time for compromise as you mature in office. Some of these Congress people, 9, 10 terms.
I hear you. I hear you, Geraldo.
Let them be the bucks now. Let them be the buckaroos.
Let them get in when they've got some age and some experience and they know what they're doing.
Well, you know what? That's what the election process is for, and the people in their districts will decide whether or not they love what they're selling in Washington or not. But I know where Geraldo's coming from, and I think there's always room for that young energy. It just determines whether or not, if that's where the voter is in the end. It's a quick term of 2 years, so we'll see. Thank you very much. Good to see you both tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy.